So I've been a pizza delivery guy for a decent amount of time, and I usually get stuck with a crappy shift of 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. I live in a pretty small city out in the boonies, so there's only like one murder per year in our area. Well, last month there were 3 back-to-back murders, and we as drivers keep on that stuff. But hey, we average out pretty good for just driving around the city all night, so it wasn't anything to get too worked up about. Anyway, it was probably around 1 a.m. and there was only me, another driver, a cook, and our manager who's in his mid-20s, and he's really cool and understanding because he had been a driver in his teens. We were all finished with all the cleaning and stuff like that because it was an unusually slow night that night. Then we finally got an order. I was the so-called lucky one to get to take this delivery down the dirt road in the middle of nowhere. I personally had never delivered to that area, but it was about 10 miles away from where I lived, so I knew there was only going to be about 5 houses on that lonely 4 miles of road. I put the pizzas in my car and started on my drive. I had just put in 2 12-inch subwoofers in the back of my '99 Honda Accord to complete my white trash look, but they weren't secured in there, and being an unkept dirt road, I was driving pretty slow. My GPS told me I had arrived, but it was about a mile off, so I turned down the subs and pulled up to what I believed to be the house. Our boss has a thing about never pulling up in the driveway no matter how much of a walk it is, and this was one of those times that I thought I'd actually do what he says. I grabbed the pizza and receipt and walked up to the door. It was a long driveway, and what sucked was they had the audacity to leave all the outside and inside lights off to the house, probably just watching a movie, I thought to myself, as it wasn't this unusual this time of night. I got up to the door and knocked. Nothing. Great, a 10-mile drive here for nothing. I knocked again and again. I started to get uncomfortable, and that's when I heard the quiet sound of someone or something walking. It was coming from around the side of the house that I couldn't see. I was getting a bit unnerved and decided this was a great time to start heading back to my car. I didn't want to go back empty-handed though. When I got to the safety of my car, I decided to ring up the person and see if they were just asleep. I was probably just imagining the footsteps or mistaking them for the creaking of the old house. No answer. I decided to balls up and head over to the door one last time for one final knock. So I put my phone on flashlight mode and walked up to the door. One more knock and nothing. This time I heard the footsteps again.
Rain lashed against the windshield. The wipers struggled to keep up. Tony, a young pizza delivery driver, peered through the darkness. He was on his way to a remote address on the edge of town. It was a delivery like any other, or so he thought. As he drove deeper into the unknown, a sense of unease crept over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The GPS announced his arrival. Tony pulled up to a dilapidated house. It looked more like a haunted mansion from a horror movie. He checked the address twice, hoping he was mistaken, but it was the right place. Taking a deep breath, Tony grabbed the pizza and stepped out into the storm. He hurried towards the front door, his heart pounding in his chest. The wind howled like a banshee. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves sent shivers down his spine. Little did he know he was about to face something far more terrifying than the storm. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and imposing, with glowing red eyes. A shiver ran down Tony's spine. He was frozen in fear as the figure stepped into the dim light of the porch. It was wearing a grotesque werewolf mask, its fangs bared in a menacing grin. Tony dropped the pizza. He didn't scream, he couldn't. He turned and ran towards his car, his blood turning to ice. The figure gave chase, its heavy breathing echoing in the night. Tony fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He could hear the figure getting closer. He managed to unlock the car and jump inside, slamming the door, just as the figure reached him. The werewolf mask slammed against the window, its red eyes burning into Tony's soul. Tony started the engine and sped away into the night. The terrifying image of the masked figure seared into his memory. He didn't dare look back. He drove until the house was a distant nightmare in his rearview mirror. Tony reported the incident to the police. They arrived at the address, their faces skeptical. The storm had subsided, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. The officers approached the house cautiously, their hands resting on their holsters. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer. They circled the house, checking for signs of forced entry. The windows were boarded up, and the doors were locked tight. The only sign of life was a faint light flickering inside. The officers finally forced their way in, their guns drawn. But the house was empty. There was no sign of the masked figure. They contacted the homeowners who were away on vacation. They confirmed that no one should have been at the house. The police left, shaking their heads in disbelief. They dismissed the incident as a prank gone wrong. But Tony knew what he had seen, and he knew it was no laughing matter. In another part of town, Sarah sat alone in her apartment, a sense of dread washing over her. She had been receiving unsettling visits from a man claiming to be a pizza delivery driver. He would ring her doorbell at odd hours, holding an empty pizza box. Each time she would tell him he had the wrong address, but he would just stare at her with an unnerving smile. Tonight the doorbell rang again. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She peeked through the peephole. It was him again, the fake pizza man. He was holding an empty pizza box, his face partially hidden in the shadows of the hallway. But Sarah could see his eyes. They were cold and calculating. She decided to ignore him, hoping he would eventually go away, but he didn't. He kept ringing the doorbell, each ring sending a jolt of fear through her. Sarah's apartment suddenly felt smaller, more vulnerable. Night, my time. The world asleep, secrets whispering on the breeze. I, a phantom courier delivering their desires. Tonight the highway stretched before me, a dark river under a starving moon. My cargo, an assortment of mundane and maybe magical, each package a mystery waiting to be unboxed. Little did I know, tonight the mysteries would unbox me. The radio crackled with static, the only sound besides the hum of my engine. The air grew heavy, thick with anticipation, or maybe it was dread. The feeling clung to me like a second skin. Something was different about tonight, something felt off. My first delivery, a rambling Victorian mansion perched atop a hill. Shadowed and silent, it loomed like a watchful gargoyle. No lights, no signs of life, just the rustling of dead leaves in the cold night air. My headlights swept across a rusted wrought-iron gate, twisted like a tortured scream. A shiver snaked down my spine. The package was addressed simply to the lady of the house. I hesitated, a knot of unease tightening in my gut. But a job's a job, right? I started up the long, winding driveway, the gravel crunching like broken bones beneath my tires. Each turn brought me closer to the imposing structure. Each turn a step closer to... what? I found the front door ajar, paint peeling like scabs. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of decay and something else, something ancient and unsettling. A grandfather clock stood frozen in the hall, its hands pointing accusingly at midnight. I called out, my voice echoing in the oppressive silence. No answer. Just then I noticed her. A figure shrouded in shadow, standing at the top of the grand staircase. Her voice, when she spoke, was a dry rasp, like the rustling of dead leaves. "You have something for me?" she asked. I left the house on Silent Hill, shaken, the old woman's words echoing in my mind. Beware the night, delivery man. It holds more than darkness. Seeking solace, I stopped at a roadside diner, a beacon of warmth and greasy comfort food. The bell above the door jingled my arrival, the sizzle of bacon, a poor imitation of comfort. The waitress, a woman with weary eyes and a kind smile, took my order. "Long night?" she asked, her voice a low murmur. I nodded, sharing a condensed version of my unsettling delivery. She listened intently, her gaze distant, as if seeing something beyond the greasy spoon and me. Back on the road, the diner's warmth faded in my rear view. The rain started, a relentless drumming on my windshield. That's when I saw her. A lone figure huddled by the roadside, drenched and desperate. Against my better judgment, I pulled over. She had kind eyes, but her skin was pale, almost translucent. She thanked me with a voice like wind chimes and told me her destination, Harmony Creek Cemetery. A familiar chill crept up my spine. The cemetery was miles off my route, but something about her, I couldn't say no. Harmony Creek was a sea of weathered headstones under a weeping sky. My passenger pointed towards a mausoleum, its marble door ajar. "That's my stop," she whispered, her breath misting in the cold air. I turned to ask her name, but the seat beside me was empty. My heart hammered in my chest. I scanned the cemetery, but she was gone, vanished. All that remained was the lingering scent of rain and lilies, and a bone-deep certainty that I had just crossed paths with something otherworldly. The rest of my deliveries blurred together, each stop punctuated by a growing sense of unease. The old woman's prophecy played on a loop in my mind. Beware the night. As dawn approached, I had one delivery left, a small package addressed to a Mr. Silas Crane. I found Mr. Crane's address in a rundown motel on the edge of town. The air hung heavy with the smell of bleach and despair. As I approached room 13, the package in my hands began to move. A soft scratching sound came from within, followed by a low, guttural growl. I stumbled back, dropping the package. The scratching grew more insistent, more frantic, and then silence. I wanted to run, to get away from this place, but a morbid curiosity held me captive. I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my ears. As I reached for the package, something inside shifted. Two glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness, staring at me with chilling intensity. I recoiled, my blood turning to ice. Whatever was in that package, it was not meant for this world. The nighttime delivery since. The open road, once my sanctuary, now feels like a haunted highway, each mile marker a tombstone. The world may dismiss my story as a tired trucker's tall tale, a product of long nights and an overactive imagination. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt, and I know that some things are best left undisturbed, hidden in the shadows of the night. Because the night, my friends, holds more than darkness. It holds secrets. And sometimes those secrets bite back.